Please welcome ASEE President-elect Joe Rensis to the stage.
Well, good morning, and welcome to Maine Plenary 2. I am Joe Rensis, the ASEE President-elect. I will start off this session with 4 awards and then introduce our keynote speaker, Dr. John J. Tracy. It is my pleasure to present the Excellence in Engineering Education Collaboration Award. This award is given by the Corporate Member Council of the American Society for Engineering Education. This award recognizes program or initiatives that demonstrate best practices and collaborative efforts to enhance engineering education. Companies may be recognized for their excellence and innovation in one or both of the following: collegiate level engineering and technology education, pre-college, K-12, K-16 programs that inspire interest in science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM. The first person that will be accepting this award is Carissa Little. Carissa is the Director of Programs for the Stanford Center for Professional Development at Stanford University. This center is part of Stanford School of Engineering that develops and delivers blended online courses, certificates, and master's degrees online at Stanford and at international locations. Little oversees a team of 20 responsible for developing and delivering innovative and multidisciplinary education programs that extend Stanford's research and teaching and meet the educational needs of industry, government, and NGOs. Little manages a graduate-level profile of courses and programs that reach more than 25,000 students each year. Recently, she has led several strategic initiatives addressing the explosion of free online courses, MOOCs. She works closely with Stanford faculty and departments and is an advocate for lifelong learners and teachers across a variety of educational institutions. A graduate of Boston University, Little worked as an educator and in high-tech product management prior to coming to Stanford in 2001. She has been an entrepreneur and co-owner of a Silicon Valley-based venture. She is a member of the American Marketing Association and has presented at the Symposium for Higher Education, the USDLA, International Forum for Women in E-Learning, and the International Association for Continuing Engineering Education. We also have a second recipient, and that is Debbie Fengros. Debbie is a project manager and academic programs for the General Motor Technical Education Programs. Established in 1984, GMTEP has partnerships with numerous universities, currently offering 5 degrees and 10 graduate-level certificates. All courses are delivered through distance learning technologies designed to allow GM employees to balance their work and personal life, while successfully pursuing their academic goals and increasing their job-related knowledge and skills. The cornerstone of this educational model is the idea that knowledge can be taught to working professionals with the result that what is learned in the classroom can be immediately applied for the job. Again, it gives me a pleasure to recognize both of them. All right, the next award I'd like to recognize is the National Most Outstanding Teacher Award. And for anyone who's not familiar with this, is each of the sections actually nominate their outstanding teacher, and then from that pool of all the sections, then the National Outstanding Teacher Award is actually selected. And this year it happens to be Robert M. Brooks. He's an associate professor in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering at Temple University. And what he will do is discuss his inspirations for this award. Robert.
Thank you. Good morning to everybody. I have a couple of points to present here. Since we don't have much time, I will get on to the point right on. The first one is a wide variety of courses. To younger faculty, I would like to appeal to them very strongly. Opportunities come unexpectedly, suddenly, sometimes, from many directions to teach new courses. That could be from the university, from the college, from the department, from the personnel, retiring, recruiting, adding. Sudden, like surprises come on. So when an opportunity knocks on your door, just open it, grab it, and take it. The general philosophy is, if you have a PhD in an engineering branch, say civil engineering, you should be able to teach almost all the undergrad courses. So it takes hard work, preparation. Don't feel shy, take it. And in no time, they add up. So you will be amazed over a period of a decade how much knowledge you amassed in addition to the facilitation of learning process. So that helped me a lot. Second point, classroom performance. A wide variety of strategies are available. Since we don't have time, for example, a couple of points I would like to present for your consideration. I firmly believe that a teacher has two hats. Number one is to teach, like the traditional way. Teach and be judge, evaluate. So it's like judge, even 0.1%, you split the hair to have a equal distribution, equal treatment, the way you treat the students, so you got to stick to the rules. But there is a second hat. That is facilitation of learning process. So in that, you are a team member. I believe in that. Team member. Teacher taught team. Teacher taught team. I'm a team member. If my team member fails, I am by default responsible to the extent of sharing it. I mean, there is a wide variety of scope there. But in the book of learning, I believe that the first page, the first sentence is, if a student failed, then the teacher failed as a team member to facilitate the transfer of knowledge. A lot of conditions apply here. A student means he attends all your classes, a typical student. He does all your assignments. He spends the time, he listens to you, he does what you ask him or her to do, and at the end, he fails. So when the second hat comes, the teacher is expected as a team member and do everything in his hand or her hand to help the student to gain the knowledge and demonstrate it through the exam processes and all the requirements. So again, because of time limitations, these two for your thinking and consideration I would like to present. Though last but not the least, I'm grateful to Dr. Dennis Szilagyi, Professor of Electrical Engineering, Temple University, Dr. Kia Sadeghi-Poor, Dean of the College of Engineering, Temple University, and Colonel Dr. Bobby Grant, West Point, for providing me with the inspiration, support, and guidance to achieve this award. Thank you very much.
All right, the next award I'm pleased to introduce is the 2014 Best Overall Zone Paper. Now, for anyone who's not familiar with how the overall zone paper is determined, in each zone there are 3 sections. Each section nominates an outstanding paper, and then from there the zone determines their outstanding paper, and then all those outstanding zone papers are looked at all together to determine the national overall zone paper. This year's paper is entitled Investigating and Visualizing Measurement Error in Novice STEM Learners. And the author here is Scott A. Sinex from Prince George Community College in Largo, Maryland. And Scott will now discuss his paper.
Thank you, Joe. Good morning. I'd like to thank the various ASEE selection committees that found that error is important to deal with. This is a concept that I've kind of worked on for the last 10 years as I've tried to bring interactive spreadsheets into the classroom, mainly in chemistry, but I've also, with doing some teacher training, found that the math audience, and as I really found out that my chemist colleagues not really thrilled about dealing with error, but that the engineers really did love it, and I appreciate that. If you go back and think about way back in your undergraduate education and maybe prior to that, you probably got asked numerous times to calculate a percent error and list some possible causes of that error. And in chemistry, the most blamed error is always the balance. The balance gets blamed even if it's not used in an experiment many times. And even when you show the students that it's really not the balance, it's many other things, they still blame the balance. And then somewhere along the line, somebody introduces you to the propagation of error. And to me, there's a lot of in between. There's a mindset that we need to develop to get students to think about errors. So over the last 5 or so years, I originally for this paper designed, with the help of some colleagues at Prince George's Community College, 4 experiments that are rather simple manipulative experiments that can be done, because I really think this is an approach that could be done roughly if you're starting, if you've got some algebra skills under your belt, you're ready to deal with this. So since my wife's a 6th grade through 10th grade algebra teacher, I pretty much know where all the algebra starts and what they do. And so you can start this early in doing these types of experiments where the experiments have the errors designed in, and the students get to see the type of behavior. They play with random errors, they play with systematic errors, and it's really getting into doing simple measurements, modeling data, and then following up with simulations. The experiments are simple, easy to do. They're pretty close to no cost. And really in the last year or so, I've actually come up with 2 more to kind of support this. And it really, I think if it's done over a long enough period of time, I believe that students would have a much better handle on error, and maybe in chemistry classes I could get them to stop blaming the balance, even after, as I said, even after I've had them check the balance and prove, oh, it's not the balance in there. With that, I thank you for your time and for the award. Thank you.
So it's my pleasure now to introduce the 2014 Best Overall PIC Conference paper. Now, actually, that's associated with this conference. There are actually 5 PICs, and there are divisions in each PIC. So each division within a PIC is eligible to actually nominate an outstanding paper for their particular division. And then the PIC chair at that point will determine the overall, working with a group typically, will determine the overall best paper for that given PIC. And then the PIC chairs will work together to identify the outstanding PIC paper for this conference. And the title of that paper this year is on Perspective on Failure in the Classroom by Elementary Teachers New to Teaching Engineering. And there's 2 authors here. The first one is Pam Lottero-Perdue from Towson University, and then the second author is Liz A. Parry from North Carolina State University. And Pam will be actually doing the presentation.
Thank you. My colleagues just got a little nervous about the size of the paper that I have right here, but I can assure you that I'll stay within my time limit. I want to start by saying that my colleague, Liz Parry, could not be here today because she is meeting with the President of the United States, you know, where we rate here. You see, Liz has been awarded with the Presidential Award for Excellence in Science, Mathematics, and Engineering Mentoring. Personally, I find this to be a highly appropriate award for her, since within ASEE, she is one of my mentors, shaping my growing engagement in the organization. However, with regard to this paper on failure, the reason I'm standing here, our roles were reversed, as I led the way with regard to our study of failure within elementary education. This collaborative learning process makes sense, and it's an essential premise of our work in engineering education. We all have much to learn from one another. This single slide that I've chosen to represent a relatively long paper considers 2 groups, 2 cultures, and I feel as though I have a foot planted in each. Let's start with the familiar for this audience, the culture of engineering. In this space, in this community of practice, there are certain norms and ideas and ways of doing, learning, and growing. Words are used in particular ways, well before phrases like epic fail were popularized in the broader culture. The words failure, fail, etc., what we call fail words in our study, have been a part of the normative language within engineering. We iterate in the design process because we expect to improve with iteration. Likewise, we also expect design failure. We design for failure. It's perhaps an exaggeration to say that engineers celebrate failure, but within the safe space of engineering design, we embrace what we can learn from it. Endpoint failures in final products, for example, Takata's airbags, are terrible. And as a learning community within our engineering societies and colleges of engineering, we learn from those failures so as not to repeat them. Let me pause for just a moment with a quick analogy. My sons, now 10 and 12, like many kids, have learned over the years that particular hand gestures have, let's say, negative connotations. As we prepared for an overseas trip, my sons were fascinated to learn that certain gestures that are pretty benign in our culture are pretty insulting and reaction-provoking in others. The life lesson to be learned here is that it's best to give a gesture, a thumbs up, for example, a bit of thought before implementing it in a different culture, or perhaps even in our own classrooms. So is the case for words. Let's move from the culture of engineering to the culture of pre-college education, and specifically elementary education. Historically, in elementary ed, failure has had a negative connotation. Teachers, schools, and systems are said to fail students when they do not meet students' needs. Students fail tests or worse classes, and worse yet, students may be labeled as failures. which is where failure shifts from being an activity to an identity. There are some glimmers of recasting failures within educational systems as an essential tool for learning, allowing kids to fail at tasks and on assignments and let them try again, developing resiliency and a mindset focused on growth rather than quick success. However, I would argue schools are still hardwired to scaffold students towards success and to avoid failure at all costs. Now let's finally enter the middle part of the Venn diagram. This is where Liz and I, and so many others in the K-12 and pre-college division live, and we've made much progress here. In this space, teachers are learning to teach engineering design to students, and students are learning to engineer. Some folks, parents, teachers, engineers, are surprised to learn that much about teaching engineering to children is pretty quickly adaptable by teachers who value active student involvement, collaboration, relevant and applied learning, and the creative bustle of children's ideas from brain to shared plan to product. However, what we've learned from this study, from the 254 teachers on our project who responded to our survey, and from 38 of those that we interviewed for their in-depth perspectives, is to be a bit cautious with the translation of failure from the culture of engineering to the culture of elementary school. We know that if children are to have authentic engineering design experiences, children's designs will fail. And we see these experiences within the context of a well-designed curriculum, such as Engineering is Elementary, as desirable. Further, we want to introduce students and children to not only the activity of engineering, but also to its lexicon. Complete avoidance of fail words seems inauthentic. Many of the teachers in our study, who at the time of our survey and interviews were preparing to teach engineering to children for the first time, shared these ideas. Many welcomed the chance for their students to fail and improve. Few, however, used fail words in their classes. Some even had a very visceral reaction to our asking, do you use words like fail and failure in your classrooms? This was usually followed by a pause, a strange look, and then some sort of an answer that resembled no. Most preferred to use more euphemistic phrases such as did not succeed or made a mistake. Teachers were accustomed to helping students see mistakes as commonplace, inevitable, and recoverable. While we recognize a design failure is not typically the same thing as making a mistake, we came to see the mistake-making analogy as a helpful entry point to talk about failure within the design process to teachers. Another important point that we've learned from the teachers is that when fail words are used, special care must be taken to associate the failure with the design and not the child. And so, like the traveler or professor who fails to consider the multiple meanings that hand gestures can take on, it would be unwise to barge into the elementary space and gesture failure without a careful concern for how that is packaged and presented. This worry that students would take on a failure identity might seem silly in the context of this lovely ballroom. However, consider an inner city environment for a moment where children have learned that they attend a failing school. This is not usually news to them. Or a child who has failed a grade, and the extrapolation may seem a little more plausible. We continue to investigate conceptions of failure within elementary school, as well as responses to engineering design failure by students and teachers, and in fact just presented on that a little while ago. It was a true honor to be selected as best paper for the 2014 annual conference on this important topic. Thank you for your time.